We get all sorts of reports about EVs are finished, that's it, the sales have crashed, nobody's buying them. If it wasn't for the corporate market, they wouldn't exist at all. But as Oscar Wilde once said, the death of EVs has been greatly exaggerated. Hi, I'm Dave. Welcome to Dave Takes It On. We're reporting today from sunny Spain. I'm on holiday, brought the camera with me, just doing a couple of videos while I'm over here, and back in the studio next week. But I wanted to have a quick look because all the figures have just been released this week, so don't want to miss the opportunity. And what we've had is all of the May figures come out. This is the sale of all cars around the world: petrol, diesel, hydrogen, HEVs, PHEVs, EVs, the whole lot, all around the world, every single country. And of course, that gives us a big insight into what is really going on. It's very difficult to do just a 1 month snapshot to say, oh, this May was brilliant or really bad. So what we're going to do today is just two things. First of all, I'm going to look at the UK. I'm going to look at the UK this May compared to last May. So this is over a whole year. It's to see whether things are trending upwards or downwards, gives a much better insight rather than just a one-off month. And then we're going to have a look at the whole world and see what's happening in the world. And that's the really interesting one. So I hope you stay with us. So I'm Dave. Welcome to Dave Takes It On. And let's see what we've got. So we're using figures from a variety of sources. The main one in this case is the SMMT, which is Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders. These are official figures. These go off to the government, and these are used for a variety of purposes. What they've just announced in May, 147,678 new cars were manufactured. This is everything. This is the petrol, diesel, hybrids, EVs, the lot, not discriminating at this stage. And that was a 1.7% increase over last May. So the market as a whole has increased slightly, 1.7%. It's a growth. It's not where they want to be, but it's a growth. Now, how's that made up? Well, if we look at there are 5 areas that they identify. They don't cover hydrogen for some strange reason. I think the figures just drop off the bottom of the graph. Hydrogen is not anything in existence at the moment. Anyway, petrol. So petrol sales were down 2.1% this May compared to last May. Diesel cars sales were down 16.7% this May compared to last May. HEVs, these are hybrid electric vehicles, were up 9.6%. Battery electric vehicles, 100% electric, were up 6.2%. And PHEVs, petrol hybrid electric vehicles, were up 31.5%. The difference in HEV and PHEV is one you can charge as you drive along. It will use regenerative braking to top up the battery. The other one, you have to plug it in. It doesn't have any regenerative. So if you don't plug it in, you're driving around in a pure petrol or diesel car. That's it. So if we look at the breakdown now, the biggest share of the market is held still by petrol. That's 54.9% of the market. Pure BEVs, these are pure 100% electric vehicles, now 17.6%, and petrol hybrid PHEVs and HEVs 21.2%. Yeah, it doesn't quite add up exactly, but there are, I say, odd little bits here or there. So what's interesting is to look back over May, not just last year, but the year before, and the year before, and the year before that. And so if we go back right the way back to 2008, 16 years ago, and the motor industry was in a much healthier situation back then. Back in 2008, EVs didn't really exist at all. Nissan Leaf came out in 2010 in Europe and Japan, and the first Teslas were around about 2009, 2010, which is the Roadster, very limited edition, and the first mass model, the Model S, was 2012, I believe. So in 2008, the UK made 175,000 vehicles that May, just in May. It stayed round about that level. By 2014, it had got up to 190,000, so it's growing nice and steady. 2015 was 195. 2016 was 205,000 vehicles produced in the UK and sold that year. And that was the peak. Since then, it's been on a downward slope. 2020, this was the exception. This was obviously the virus, the lockdowns and everything. That hammered down to 20,000. But what that should have done was built up a pent-up demand for when things opened up again. 2021 climbed back up to 150,000. 2022 dropped again, 125,000. 2023, 170,000. And 2024, 148,000. So we have a situation today where the best output we've had in a May month for the last 16 years was in 2016. There are loads of reports out there. I've published some of them, which say 2016 was peak ice, which was the highest ice it's ever going to get, and after that it's on a decline, and all the other figures would indicate that's true. The pure ice are dropping off like a stone. A lot of people still wary of EVs are not yet going into full 100% EVs, but they are going for the hybrids. And so you've got the hybrids taking a much higher percentage of the market. So that's where we stand. If we look at who's buying them, a lot of people say the private people aren't buying them. Private sales, 57,000, and that was down 12.9%, so there is a drop in private sales. The fleet, 87,000, that was up 14%, so it means more people are leasing. And don't forget, this also includes people who go for a job and they get offered a company car, and that car, for green credential reasons, happens to be an EV. They have no choice whether they get an EV or not. They just get handed a car, but that's included in the figures. So the total for May, 148,000, up 1.7% on May, but down 25% on 2008. If we look at year to date, 2024, private sector 315,000, that's down 11.3%. The fleet 495,000, that's up 24%, making the total 828,000 year to date compared to last year, and that's a 7.1% growth rate. So what we're seeing is a transition from people buying their cars to people leasing them. Now, people often say, oh, well, they don't count. Yes, they do. I interviewed someone called Tom, and he leased his MG4. And the reason for that, it was cheaper to lease an MG4, sorry, not MG4, MGZS, but MG4's the same. And we were at Everything Electric recently, and we saw the GWM Aura. And that lease started £150 a month. These are staggering figures for leases. Can you imagine a brand new EV? This is an Aura. It's got range about 250, 280 miles, full four-seater, really nice car. And those leases start at £150 a month. Now, if you are a private buyer and you have a choice between going into a Citroen garage, looking at a C3 or C4, Renault garage, whatever they do, the Captur and whatever, or a VW Polo or Golf or whatever, you're faced with £200 or £300 a month for a finance deal. Plus, on top of that, you have to pay petrol. Now, your petrol nowadays, if you have 8,000 miles a year as your average figure, and your car does 40 miles to the gallon, and I know some do a bit more, but some do less, 40 is a pretty average figure, you're going to spend £100 a month on your fuel bill, plus you've got servicing. So, this is a no-brainer. You could go out, you could buy a Citroen C4 and you could pay £250 a month for a finance deal. You could pay £100 a month for petrol and probably £20 or £30, £40 a month for averaged out for servicing. So that's about £400 a month. Or you can go and get a GWM Aura for £150 a month. You've got no petrol bill, no servicing bill, but of course, you've got to charge it. So if you can charge at home, this is an absolute no-brainer. My last car I bought was a Citroen C4 Picasso, it was a 7-seater one, and that cost me £225 a month on a finance deal. Plus, I was a heavy driver, a heavy mileage driver at that time. I was spending about £400 a month on diesel. But If you are looking for a new car and you think to yourself, well, I only keep it 2, 3 or 4 years and then I get rid of it, trade it in, have to buy a new one and I set off again, suddenly these deals, the MG4, I think is available from about £180 a month. There are others available from £200 a month, and even something like a Tesla or a Mercedes EQA or EQB, they're about £400 a month. And it means that it is much, much cheaper now to lease than it is to buy. So I would say it is absolute no-brainer that people are looking into how to reduce their motoring costs. And one of the ways, if you were to go out and get the Aura and pay £150 a month, £1,000 deposit, give you that, but you probably have a car to trade in, or you can sell it privately and pay the £1,000 deposit. But that's really cheap motoring, particularly if you can charge at home. So there is a trend towards going over to leasing, and EVs have a beneficial benefit attached to them to make them more attractive. So going on to fuel, we're looking at what fuel cars use for May. For diesel, the use of diesel dropped by 16.7%, all diesel cars. Use of petrol dropped by 2.1%, 100% battery 6.2% up, PHEV 31.5% up, HEV 9.6% up. And year to date, petrol is down to 55,000 cars, 11% down on the year to date. Diesel was 11% down, petrol was 5% down, battery vehicles were 9.7% up, PHEVs 31.5 and HEVs 12.6. So there's quite a dramatic shift. The pure ICE cars are going. The petrol HEV, petrol hybrids are seeing a bigger surge at the moment. Very logical reason for that, and the reason is there's an awful lot of people out there who don't think an EV is good for them. But they don't want to buy a petrol one either. They think petrol's dead and EV is going to take over one day. When it gets good enough, when it can do 1,000 miles on a single charge and charge in less than 5 minutes, then I'll have one. But I don't want to buy one of these old petrol in the meantime because they're just out of date. So people have stopped buying petrol cars, but they're not yet ready to buy the EVs. So what they do is a logical thing. They just go and lease. Back to leasing. And they'll lease for 1 or 2 years, maybe 3 years, and in that time, well, they get an experience of whatever it is they lease. So they can happily go and lease an electric car. Tom, again, I mentioned, was an example. He wasn't sure it was right for him. So he leased. Now, with leasing, if you do a 2-year lease, the worst that can happen is it's absolute rubbish and you hand it back at the end of 2 years. Say, I don't ever want an electric car again. I'm going to stick with my hybrids or whatever it is you're going for. But if you do like it, you probably will know now whether that particular model of car is right for you. In other words, he's driven around in an MG ZS for 2 years. He's been on holiday with it. He's charged out on the road. He's charged at home most of the time, uses it mostly for commuting. And he will know whether that's the car for him when he comes to change. Whether he buys one or leases another is irrelevant, but he'll now know. He also might have identified some of the shortcomings. So he might have found that it's not so good on long trips. It hasn't got the range he wanted. He might also find that it has... Okay, just a crowd going by, heading down to the beach. The end of 2 years, he might have identified things he didn't like about the car. Maybe the boot space was too small. Maybe the performance wasn't what he wanted. Maybe the range wasn't enough. Whatever it is, when he goes to look for a new EV, whether he buys it or rents it, he will know exactly what he's looking for. And his second choice will probably be the best one for him. So people are seeing this. Let's take a break from buying a petrol car. Let's go and lease a PHEV or a battery, a BEV, and let's run them for 2 years. And if it's rubbish, then, yeah, we've had 2 years of rubbish motoring. But if it's any good, we've learned a lot about it. So that's very much the market for the UK. Growth everywhere, few areas where it's shrinking, but EVs are doing well. They're ahead of target. They're up at about 17% of all the cars sold now are pure EVs. Everything is going well. the rate of growth has slowed down dramatically, and that's simply because the market is saturated. If you look at the top 10 cars on sale today in the UK, I've got a list of them here, you will find, let me find my list. Here we go. You will find number 1 in May, this is Kia Sportage, then the Puma, Audi A3, VW Golf, VW Vauxhall Corsa, VW Polo, Qashqai, MG ZS, Hyundai Tucson and Duke. I've priced them up, not one of those cars is more than £30,000, not one. And some of them are down below 20,000. The Vauxhall Corsa, for example, and the VW Polo, £20,000. When you look at what's available in the EV market, I'm going to forget for the moment the MG4, that's the outlier, but everything else is in the 35 to 40, 50,000 pound price range. Even your basic Hyundais, the Konas, in the low 30,000s. They are all way, way, way dearer than these. So what the market is, they want the cheaper cars. They want under £30,000, preferably a lot of them down to £20,000, and that's where they're buying. Now the EVs start basically at 40,000, give or take. I know some cars are less, but not many. And go upwards from there. So they have absolutely blasted that part of the market. They've saturated it. There's no room left. Tesla sold best-selling car in the world, the Model Y, absolutely blasted that area. And what's missing from the EV world is the cars down in the £20,000–£25,000 price range. And that's exactly what we're getting this year. We've got the Dasher Spring arriving. There's an awful lot of people in the moment drive around in Dashers. There's nothing wrong with them. They are nice cars. They're very much at the budget end, but they're nice cars. We've got the BYD Dolphin arriving, and that one is well, it's £10,000 in China. It won't be that here, probably going to be between 15 and 20,000 here. We've got the Citroen E-C3, we've got the Renault 5, we've got the Hyundai, the new one, which is 25,000, and Tesla later this year, so they say, will be launching at 25,000. When people start launching decent EVs at £20,000 to £25,000, they will absolutely take off. For exactly the same reason I have just said, that an average petrol car will pay £100 a month in petrol if your car does 40 to the gallon at current prices. Your average EV, if you can charge at home, and an awful lot of people can, they reckon up to 70% of people can, those people will be able to drive round for a tenth of that, literally a tenth of that, £10 a month. So at that point, people are going to start looking, well, hang on, I can buy a Volkswagen Polo for £20,000, or I can buy a Citroen E3C, C3, also for £20,000 euros. And one's going to cost me £10 a month, the other's going to cost £100 a month to fuel it. So at that point, people are going to start making different decisions. That will totally transform the market. And when I'm going to cover in a minute the world market, what the world market is saying at the moment is that the EV market has sort of stagnated. They've hit the market they're aiming for. People don't understand. If you make a car like Ferrari, they're launching a £500,000 car. There's probably, I don't know, 50,000 people in the world can afford one. Maybe 100,000, I don't know, I'm just throwing some figures here. And of those, some will buy Lamborghinis, some will buy Bentleys, some will buy whatever. So your market is very, very small. You probably have a few thousand, 10,000, 100,000 people that you're aiming your product at, and you're hoping a good percentage of those will actually buy your product. When you get over to the absolute premium end, the Rimacs of the world, and the Bugattis, these are £1 million, £2 million cars. They probably only sell half a dozen a year, and that's enough to keep them going. So that's your market. When you come down into the £40,000 to £50,000 market, there's an awful lot more people. There's millions of them, and they will buy into that. But there's tens of millions who can't afford that, but can afford £20,000. So when the EVs get down into the £20,000, they're not going to be looking at the same size market as they had with the early EVs with the £40,000 to £50,000 market. They're going to be looking at a market which is 3, 4, 5, maybe even 10 times the size. And that is what the world experts are now predicting, is once these cars get down into the mass market, into the top selling cars price range, they are just going to take off. So they're forecasting for this year massive growth. So if we look at the world, I'm not going to go into in detail, there's such variety. There's countries that are absolutely racing away with this, others dragging their heels, always will be. You can pick any one you want, but we just look at the overall trend. If we look at the International Energy Agency, they say now 1/3 of all Chinese cars are EVs. That's it, they've hit that. They're talking about 17 million in the total market this year. EVs in Europe, 1.5 million, same with the USA. They're forecasting EVs are poised for a massive leap in growth. USA is seeing growth of 20% year on year. Europe is 10% year on year. It's growing everywhere, and when these cheaper cars come in, it's going to transform the market. ING, it's an internet bank, a lot of you will know. 2023 dramatically exceeded their predictions for EV growth. Or someone else got it wrong, and they found that year on year the growth is 108%. Europe's gone up 13.7%, USA 12.4%, China 11%. These are all growth rates. You know, for a company to have a growth rate of 10% is a massive achievement. It's really good. But when it was 20 or 30, people look back and say 10% is nothing. There's an awful lot of companies, and that would include supermarkets, would like to make 10% growth on all the products across the range. So what's going to happen this year? That growth rate is slowing down. They're projecting the growth rate will slow to about 2.6% this year. But that's not bad. That's a reasonable growth rate. If we look at the global market, 17% of all cars sold now are EVs. This is stunning. And they're saying that the new cheap cars to arrive will just absolutely lift the market totally and change everything. Forbes news agency, they quote Mark Twain again. Yeah, the EV death is greatly exaggerated. The world, 20% of all cars sold in are EVs. This is amazing. Nearly 1/5 of all cars in the whole world are now EVs, new sales, and they're forecasting a growth of up to 40% this year in EVs alone, not PHEVs, just pure EVs. So there's massive growth on the way. So what we have then is everything's looking good. None of this is a surprise to me. I forecast a long time ago that the EV sales would stall because the cheapest one you could buy was about £35,000. That is way beyond the budget of the top 10 selling cars in the UK. And so it's a very small market, but they did phenomenally well. They've just absolutely taken over that market altogether. So this year is going to be an interesting one when the new cheaper budget cars come in. It's about 5 or 6 of them at the moment. We've got the Dashers, we've got the Citroen C3, we've got the new Renault 5 coming out. It's interesting. We've got the Hyundai coming out, got the Tesla coming out. This is going to be a really interesting end to the year, and we've got to see yet what's going to happen with the way of robotaxis. Big announcements on the 8th of the 8th. I know a lot of you don't like it. I don't think it's ever going to happen. I'm of the opposite opinion. I think this is going to happen very, very quickly. But anyway, thanks very much for watching. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe. It really helps the channel. If you want to be notified of future videos, hit the bell notification icon. And any of you who want to support the channel, please have a look at our Patreon page. It gives a lot of advantages that we make videos specially for our Patreon members that we don't always upload onto YouTube, and certainly they would get advanced viewing of it. So thanks very much. I'm Dave.